I'm Sari Kimbell, and I've done just about everything in the food industry. I have helped hundreds of packaged food business entrepreneurs, and now I want to help you make your delicious dream a reality. Whether you want to be successful at farmers markets, online, or wholesale onto store shelves, food business success is your secret ingredient. I will show you how to avoid an expensive hobby and instead run a profitable food business. Now let's jump in. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. This one, I have been giddy thinking about doing this. I'm so excited to have my guest with me, Kristin Graham. Kristin is a former journalist. She spent 20 years leading culture and communications at global companies, most recently a little one some of you might have heard of called Amazon. I don't know. She's now the founder of Unlock, which centers on how brain science, psychology, and habits can unlock potential and performance. Welcome, Kristin.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I co-nerd with you.
We are going to nerd out today. So I've known Kristin for, I guess since, months. We'll just say going on a year.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, she is just a fabulous human being. I learned so much from her. She helps me level up. You said one time at one of our retreats that iron sharpens iron. And I love that because you definitely helped me get sharper.
Same.
So I wanted to ask Kristin to come on today because in May, we're talking about productivity. And this is really your jam. You really help people become more productive. We'll talk about Unlocked and some of what you offer later, but I think you're such the perfect person to talk to us about why words matter and how we can kind of train our brain for some better habits. So I'm really excited. Do you want to just say anything else about yourself? Sorry, I just kept talking.
No, I love it. Please keep talking. Keep talking about me. There's things that nobody ever does in regular meetings. I love this subject so much because they say we teach what we most need to learn.
Yes.
And if nothing else, I've been my own student and seen all the different aspects of it. And there's a big, big difference between having information and then putting the action behind that, as you well know, something that we've talked about a lot. And it can be so overwhelming, overwhelming. Yeah. It's like saying, hey, I want to go run a marathon, but I haven't bought any shoes. So I'm just going to read a bunch of books on it. And it really, really comes down to what are those first, I call them the ridiculously small steps. What's an RSS? And really, how can we make this feel doable?
I love that. Ridiculously small steps. So, you speak for large corporations, some big names. I won't even throw them out yet, but you, this is what you do. You go around and talk with big organizations and small organizations, like people doing big things, and help their employees to become more successful, develop better habits. So, we're talking here to entrepreneurs, people who are starting food businesses or trying to scale them up. We were talking before, it's who are the people listening? Of course, this is generalizing, but a lot of people have never run their own business, and that takes a whole new skill set, right? Yeah. How do you motivate yourself to do your own job? It's somehow we're willing to do hard things for an employer, but then all of a sudden it's us as our own boss, and we're terrible at it. So help us, Kristin. Where do we start?
So we're not terrible at it. That's where we're going to start, Sari.
Oh no, she caught me.
I think it's really, really, really important. We can talk all about tools and tricks and technology and apps and all of that stuff, but really, and you know this, it starts in our own head. And when we allow ourselves the words or the framing, that's giving oxygen to excuses. And the most important thing that we can do before we get into any methodologies is just to say, what is the story that we keep telling ourselves? Because we become what we think we are. So within that space, and the reason I'm so excited to talk to this audience isn't because it's some giant corporation. It's because you're my people. I'm an entrepreneur as well. I've never run a business either. And you said it so beautifully, we will keep promises to other people, to our jobs, our colleagues, our clients, but ooh, running our own stuff, like, that is mental work as much as it is ridiculously small steps.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure where I wanted to start, but let's start with words because we're going to geek out. We're going to nerd out on, on words.
I love it.
In a good way. So I hear a lot of negative self-talk with my clients, with members inside Food Business Success. Just it's a brand new thing for them. Oftentimes they're working with technology they've never had to do, or money, right? Or getting themselves to do things
Yes.
are challenging to do. So where do we start? Like, and this is not just woo-woo stuff. Like you're a brain. I mean, you focus on the science of it, right?
Well, I focus on the science of it because when we start by saying this is mental work or this is woo in our head, I think that there is a societal pressure to dismiss that, the kind of buck up and just try harder. It's a very Western American philosophy. But true progress is going to come from the framing that we start out with. So when I've gotten into words and I spent my corporate career writing and storytelling, words are intended to inform, influence, or inspire. And we can talk about from the marketing that we do to the emails that we have, but that's usually the exchange of information in any connection. Sure. It's for those purposes. So we're giving so much thought to the words that we're giving outbound, and we get into that with marketing and sales narratives, but really that pulling it back to the audience of one and the words that are being used consistently, repeatedly, subliminally, that really becomes the make or break. And this isn't just the fake it till you make it poster with like a little kitten hanging on a wire. It really comes down to why I got stepped into the science of it. And there's a lot of backstory to why I did that, but really trying to apply just how do you even have something be memorable? If you just take words and put it into short-term memory, you could do a wonderful pitch to somebody, but was it framed so that they could remember it 2 days later and then take action on it? Because in any business, it isn't just to give information, it's to inspire them to act. That's why I got into brain science and also psychology, because those things are rooted in everything we see, from the Netflix recommendations they have for us to the sales newsletters that we get. Even all the way down to the notifications on our phone. There is science behind why it's the color red. So I got so curious about what motivates our behavior and then how do the words interlay into
Okay.
that.
So fascinating.
Like, wow.
So let's just take the technology one, because I hear that one a lot. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm just starting out. Now Sari's asking me to get onto Google Drive and Google Spreadsheets and social media and my website, right? Like there's a lot that gets thrown at you, and if it's new. So what I hear from some clients over and over is it's like, I'm just not good with technology. I don't know how to do this, right? So where do we start when do we just try to become aware of it, that we're even like a lot of people, I don't think they even know that they're doing it.
Well, I completely relate to it. And you have sat side by side with me as I was trying to figure out technology for my own podcast. I just launched a new website after my initial entrepreneur website. It's very hard to feel new at anything. I think that is understanding human psychology. It's hard to be a new kid in a class. It's hard to be trying anything for the first time. Brene Brown calls them the FFTs.
Yes, I love that.
So I don't think you have an explicit podcast, but it's just the flipping first times. I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's so frustrating. Anything new is going to have that resistance barrier. And that is just and that is, again, going back to our brain's entire job was designed to keep us safe, and comfort keeps us safe. Staying inside our cave keeps us safe because there's woolly mammoths out there. And so when we get frustrated at ourselves and we're thinking, oh, I don't have the right willpower, I can't do that, it's really your brain just trying to keep you safe. So when you can recognize that and give it grace, then you can say, what else can I feed you that is a different type of fuel? That's where words meet the brain. And I think that really becomes our own tool set. So I can appreciate it as the entrepreneur who is wildly frustrated quite frequently with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then I stop myself in those moments and being like, so what can you do? What's the most important next step? That's one of the fundamentals of the productivity work that I teach. It's one thing to have an extensive to-do list. And I can only imagine that your people are tracking it in their brains, they're tracking it in their phones, they're tracking it probably on a physical list. You can see me right now. I've got all these Post-it notes behind me. Our brains are so busy trying to keep track of it. But really a productivity step is to say, okay, Kristen, you're going to start a podcast. What's the most important next step? Okay. So which platform am I using? Which microphone am I using? So breaking it down into palatable bite-sized pieces really can help the overwhelmed entrepreneur, of which I am one, say, but what needs to be done first? What needs to be done today? Those two things alone can really help us sort through the noise that's constantly in our head.
I know for me, getting it out of my head and onto paper, whether it's little sticky notes all over like you have behind you, or I love the big sticky notes and I will put those up on my wall and do project planning and just get it all out of my head first. So what do you suggest for people when maybe it gets pointed out to them or they notice like, I'm probably not speaking to myself very well, right? I'm probably not empowering myself, that I think some of it, like Brene Brown would say, FFTs, or she calls them, I think, terrible first times for the PG rate, TFTs. But she says, first step is just like, oh, that's right. I'm in a TFT or FFT. I'm in a new situation. So is it just like compassion, first of all, for just understanding that's where we're at?
So one of the things too, when we're thinking about the words that are in our head, is we don't even realize that they're part of our lexicon. They've probably been sitting in our head for decades. So really is there someone who can reflect it back to you in conversations and just say, hey, these are my trigger words, or these are some of the subtitles I think I'm using. And so a friend, a coach, a partner that can just say, hey, Sari, you just said you were terrible at something. The other thing too, is you can have actual find and replace and have it somewhere visually within your line of sight that is able to say, if this, then this. And it's because it is such a deeply rooted narrative that overcoming it is going to take a lot of multisensory tools. It just are.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Do you have any examples of like kind of sneaky words that you feel like make a big impact that we say to ourselves all the time?
Well, I think that there's also excuses that we allow to be part of reality. And so I'll quote the famous philosopher Yoda here to say, do or do not, there is no try. And I think that a lot of times when we put things out there, I might, I think should is a big one. I should get back to them today. Well, is that on you, or are they even expecting that? And there's a lot of tools we can talk about in productivity about how to get around that. Just signaling to other people, hey, I received your note. I'll respond by Wednesday. Let me know if you need something sooner. There's a lot of things in communications that we can just give ourselves grace and space on. But when we get into, back to your point about the words of what do we keep putting forward that we can then reframe in the moment. So within those elements of how are we enabling ourselves to show up, I often go back in my own emails and strip out what I would call the weaker words.
Yes,
so
I love that.
I think is a great one. I think we should look at delivery on X. And they're filler words. They're the equivalent of and like when we're speaking to one another. It often softens the way that we're wanting to put something. As entrepreneurs, there's also a lot of gender studies as women. It's that wanting to soften something to make it look like a request instead of a command. And the elements in business is clarity is kindness. Mm-hmm. And so when we're trying to fill it in with, I I hope that this isn't too much of an effort for you. I'm just really hoping that we can find something by Monday, because we're trying to be nice, but nice doesn't have a place in digital communications. Nice is an emotion. Email is digital. And so you can still be a good person and speak succinctly. And that is absolutely a concept that takes a while for us to get used to. And I do it myself. As I mentioned, I go back into my emails and put things out there. You can still have some personality. You can still say thanks and have a great weekend at the end. But all that buffer, I call it the really long front door, Matt. Be brief, be bright, be gone. Because in business, that is the currency that matters.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Because I think I do that. Actually, I'm going to just say that again. I do that.
Case in point. I love it.
Myself. I do that when I write emails. First of all, I'm terrible at like the greeting part. So I always do that later. Like I'll just write what I need to say. And then I'll look for words like just and think and maybe, or, some of those softer words, like you said, the filler words that don't make it sound like I'm coming in and saying, I know what I want, or here's what I need, or, the next step. And then I'll usually write hi, how are you?
Right. We're softening it. By the way, I just want to reflect you that you just said that you were terrible at that again.
Oh, dang it. What did I say I was terrible about? I'll have to go back and listen.
That I'm terrible at doing the I thinks and the buffers and all of that. Yeah. And I know I'll never be on your podcast again, but I think that this is a really great example of how we don't even realize we're saying it.
Yeah. I'm like, what did I say that?
Oh, isn't that interesting though? But if we didn't know each other and we did, twice in 15 minutes, you have told me that you're terrible twice.
Yeah.
And we don't, but this is a perfect example. We don't know what we are doing to ourselves. And so when we're engaging in business, especially as entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurs, is we are giving signals all the time. That's what communication is. If a communication is intended to be a beacon, a satellite of connection, the signals that we're giving out are really, really important. And we're giving out signals in an extremely crowded landscape of a lot of other signals and noisiness. And so there's one thing about trying to be heard in a noisy world. And there's another thing to say which words are landing. And you're right about the extra words. Our brains just don't have access for filtering anymore. The polite back and forth really is a burden. I just did a post yesterday about one of the best things you can do in your emails is to put up at the top, no need to respond. Because if it's just truly an FYI, because then we get into thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Have a great weekend. You too.
6 emails later.
We try to apply in-person interactions to our digital landscape. And that's digital as machines. Just make that about information and be a good person offline. Because we're trying to associate our worthiness and our customer service through words. And truly, truly, especially after the last 2 years of a pandemic, the best thing that you can do is fewer things better. Yeah.
I so love the name of your podcast and that concept, which was so good.
It's all like, branding. It's all branding.
Lands. So what do I do? So first I need to try to catch myself every time. Clearly I say I'm terrible at some things more frequently than I realize.
We all do it.
Yeah. And then, but it's not necessarily like in coaching, we would say like, don't go to daisies and rainbows where it's like, I'm amazing at this because it doesn't feel true. What do you recommend like that we do next when we catch ourselves saying the terrible, the word we're avoiding? the terribles. I think that we have an aversion to neutrality. And so we want to try to overcorrect to something. Whereas simply removing some either triggers or extras, those fillers, those I thinks, that alone is improvement. Versus now what do I have to do instead of it? We don't have to rush to replace some of that. It's okay for there to be space on a lot of levels. There's a lot we could unpack with that one. But another one I'll give you is Sari. Whether we use that word specifically,
I'm sorry for being late. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I hear that so much. Yeah.
It is. So, but here's an example. I want to go back to what you said about what do you do instead? So the first answer was sometimes it's just removing is enough, full stop. Sometimes just removing the words is enough. And in other cases, when we catch ourselves doing it, it is the reframing or the replacement. So sorry, again, it's also a very common expression, but being able to say, when I find myself in the middle of either saying sorry or being inclined to do that, where do I have my mental flashcards that I can replace? So one of the ones that I have worked a lot on using myself is, instead of I'm sorry for being late, to say, thank you for your patience.
Mm.
And it can work in person, like rushing into the coffee shop. It can work in an email. Instead of, I'm sorry it took me so long to respond, saying, thank you for your patience with my reply.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they're like, I have 199 other emails. I didn't even realize you didn't reply, right? Sometimes we make this such about a shortcoming on ourselves, but it's an intentional strategy of replacing a negative with a gratitude. Thanking somebody automatically puts them, let's go back to psychology, in I'm pretty awesome. I just got I was just at Disney World last week, and I was with a bunch of teenagers and a bunch of adults, and we were going to find a place.
I'm sorry.
To sit. Yes. That's a whole, she's actually sorry there, friends. That was sincere. But the reason I'm telling you this is we went up to get a table, and there was a young worker who had just finished cleaning the table for us, disinfecting it, etc. And I said to them, thank you so much for doing this. And he looked at me and said, you're the third person who's thanked me all day, and I've been here since 7 a.m.
Mm.
And by the way, it was like 7 p.m. So the reason I told you that long story was because when you start with something that's a positive framing, we don't get thank yous in our day. We're all, first of all, in our own head, because we're always self-assessing what we could have done better. But we also don't get it from other people. So when you lead with grace, that stands out. So you can be strategic at the same time that you're being polite.
Mm-hmm. So good.
But when you come at, like, saying, I just told you that I'm terrible twice, and you also come at, I'm sorry, you already put yourself at a disadvantage. And I remember somebody in a meeting being like, your apology has taken longer than you've now interrupted our meeting.
Right.
And so we think that we're rushing to do something where it's really, does anybody actually care? Can we move on? And so it's for our own framing, but it's also our stumbling around becomes extra delays.
Right. I think some of it so much is just habit, of course. That is something I'm going to say I'm actually pretty good at, that I have been able to dial back the sorries. And I notice it with a lot of my clients where they're, they didn't get something done, and it's this like long ongoing apology. I'm so sorry. And like beating themselves up. And it's like, listen, it is what it is. Like, let's just, what are we going to do now in the moment? And I think it's just so much of it is a lot of habit that we're not even being aware of it.
It is habit. And back to signals, you are now putting the onus on the other people to excuse you.
Yes.
So not only are you giving away power, right? If we want to talk about those dynamics, business or whatever, but now you have put forward a social exchange that they're kind of required to respond to. And so our intention is one thing, but the impact of it is just mitigating. We're no longer doing business. We're no longer having a connection. We're having like a counseling session.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am going to be thinking about that for a while, because you're so right. Like, I'm sorry is all about me, and look at me, and I'm so sorry. And now you have to respond and make me feel better. I love your turn of phrase with thanks for your patience, where it makes it about them. Also, if it's something like I failed to meet a deadline, just coming in saying, I didn't get this done, but here's what's going to happen next. Like, I don't need an apology for it. It's your business.
That's such an important point too, because there are all sorts of deadlines, and some things are under our controls and others aren't. And the other thing too, is we're getting into sorries and It's also framing very quickly an acknowledgement. Just as a lot of that person said he hadn't heard a lot of thank yous, especially when it comes to business or interpersonal exchange, just saying, I acknowledge that this delay has to be frustrating. We can now spend some time looking at alternatives, options, and solutions. Just those acknowledgements without the extended apologies or blame or anything else, just saying, this has to be frustrating. Let's see where we can partner on a next step. That acknowledgement also can diffuse things. Mm-hmm. And so while I said earlier that emotion doesn't have a place in a lot of things, in business and the human dynamic, emotion shouldn't be overwrought in your emails. It's not your diary entry. But in an exchange, especially if you're going to be in business, you're going to have challenging situations, period. How we deal with them is also a signal to the other people, because will they come back to, have you just established your reputation and your brand for how things go next after things don't go well? That's really, really important to think through.
Yeah. It's a big indicator for me when I watch clients and people I work with, that to see how they deal with hardships and with, drama and crisis and, things not going well. It's a big indicator of their success.
Sure. Well, an entrepreneur's life is going to be full of paper cuts. It just is. That's part of the technology or the rest of it. But it's also going to be unexpected pivots.
Yeah.
I've yet to meet an entrepreneur that's like, that went just exactly as I planned. I made $100,000 in 30 days. Check.
Nothing went wrong and I didn't have to think about
it's embracing those and saying the yes and.
Yeah.
In terms of, yes, that happened and. It's powerful too.
Right. I love it. So yeah, I think going to a neutral spot, it gets a little bit like the pink elephant, like, where it's like, don't say terrible. And then you're like, all I do is think about terrible.
I'm terrible at not saying I'm terrible. For sure. And I think
finding a neutral space where it's like technology. Oh, here's technology, right? Like it just is neutral. It's technology. I got to learn some new things, but I can I can figure some things out. I have record of me figuring things out.
That's such an important point. I have record of figuring things out and allowing ourselves the permission to say, I can be an entrepreneur and a student. Mm-hmm. I can be a learner and a professional. There's that ampersand again. We often think that in order to be something, we have to be instantly good at it. And when you're able to say, not in the excusing, like, oh, I'm a new entrepreneur. It's just saying, yeah, I am a student of podcasts. I'm learning repeatedly. And in fact, as I've been going back and forth on it, I'll say my lesson for this week is this particular software. And I just have been trying to frame it for myself of what I am given the opportunity to learn again. Yeah. So being professional does not mean that you still can't be an early active learner.
Mm-hmm. I think that's just part of the journey of entrepreneurship. Like it's kind of why we like it. I think, at least for me, that's why I like it. Cause I'm always learning something new. And yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh, come on, really?
Right. Oh, for sure. Well, it's like the University of Life. If we showed up to the university and we're like, well, all you get is math classes, Kitten, enjoy. Like, where are my electives? Where do I get to learn? And that's, I think, what entrepreneur is. Yes, it's going to be operations, and it's going to be economics. It's going to be marketing. It's going to be all the things that is the University of Entrepreneurship. But you also get to have electives. So right now, my electives is new media. And what are ours? So there's a lot within that space to be able to say, there's no grades in this class. That's a really, really important thing, because that's where we get into our head.
And there's no time limit either, right? Like that's a really important piece. We talk a lot about that in our mastermind, right? Smash the clock. Like I think people get on this, like, I should know what I'm doing. Like I'm a brand new entrepreneur, never done this before, but somehow I should know what I'm doing. I should have it all figured out. And I should have it done in 3 months.
I love that you brought up smash the clock, because the other part of smashing the clock is comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
When we come in and we're saying, but that person's in the same business and they're doing this, or, oh, they got that opportunity. And it is not a finite piece of pie. There is a lot of room for a lot of successes, which is why I think celebrating wins in whatever fashion, it's really, really important, because when we're always turning around and looking at who's next, we're going to, I just mentioned I have a new puppy. She will literally be looking behind her and walk into a wall. That's not even an exaggeration. And I think that that's what's happening to us a lot of the times of, well, what are they doing? Instead of run the mile that you're in.
Yeah. Love it. So let's talk about productivity a little bit more. What are some hacks, some habits that you see when you, you talk about, I know you help people with performance and being higher achievers at their work. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things before we get into tactics that I think is really, really important for people to understand is, what is your natural hardware? I'll be techie for a moment. Any high performing operating system has hardware and software. And I think of software as our skills, our habits, our routines. Hardware is going to be our factory settings. So when we're going to step into talking and thinking about productivity, and so I went from having a corporate day job where my time was structured-ish to time being my own. And that is definitely squishy. I think that's the scientific word for it. So, but one of the things I like to pull us back and think about is, and here, let me ask you a question, Sari. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Yeah, I'm totally a morning person.
And you've always been like that?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe as a teenager, I probably would. No, even then, I was much more of a morning person. Yep.
Yeah. And so when do you, now that you're an entrepreneur, when do you fill up your mornings with a lot of, what do your mornings look like?
Yeah. So I get up, the alarm goes off at 5:30, which I had to train myself as an entrepreneur, right? Because I was sleeping in, like, it doesn't matter, like whenever I get up, but I have new systems now over the last few years. But yeah, I get up pretty early. I do some meditation, writing, Power 5, those kind of things. And then I get ready. I either go work out or I just go ahead and get ready, depending on my day. And then I really do try to schedule at least 2 hours of just deep work time. So no meetings, no calls, right? And just like have deep work time for me to get some things done. Because I know that that's my most productive time.
And that knowledge is probably a large contributor to your successful business. So let me ask you, when do you feel a time in the day where you kind of hit a slump? Do you ever have a bit of a, like, I'm going a little slower?
Yeah. Usually probably by 3, 4, just the deep, hard work is probably not the best. I can still do calls and meetings pretty well, and still stay focused with others. But if I was to just be like, all right, I got to really dig into this program and write emails or something like that, that would be challenging.
Well, and that you just beautifully explained what in science is known as chronobiology. And that is your natural rhythms and preferences. You have a sense of when you go faster and when you go a little slower. And everybody has that, by the way. So, and everybody's a little different. But for me, coming out of corporate, where my time was dictated by the calendar and when other people scheduled my time, one of the things I've learned through science, and it's really been impactful as an entrepreneur, is what you just said. Where is my deep work time? So like you, I'm an early bird. And so instead of giving away all that time in the morning, and there's lots of things that we don't always control. And there's lots of times you're going to respond to a client, you're going to do things, and that's fine. It's more about what's your understanding. And so where are you having open time to actually do your work, your zone of genius? And then, so for a lot of people, you've got within 3 hours of waking up, that's what's called your peak. That's when you're going to find yourself firing on all cylinders. Now, how you wake up is a different conversation if you want to get into that, how you wake up. But really within 3 hours of waking up, you're going to be at your peak performance. This is for people who are more early birds. There's night owls, which I can get to in a second. And then 7 hours, typically after waking up, you go into what's known as the trough. And that's where, like you just said, I can still do it. It's just, I don't want to, I'm going to go slower, and I'll probably want to distract myself with something.
Right.
That's usually when I find myself in the kitchen being like, maybe I'll just do my dishes really quick because I don't want to do that email. So this is a great principle in productivity of understanding your own nuance. Here's another thing for people listening. If you find yourself rereading like the same sentence or paragraph over and over, and you're thinking, man, I just need some more coffee, you're probably more in your trough. And the two things that you should do there are go get water. There's a whole movement of hydration linked to cognitive capacity. And the other thing that you should do is move. Maybe you should get up and go do the dishes in your sink because you have physical movement. So think about those times you get yourself locked in and you just feel really slow, like walking through water.
Yeah.
And then people typically will come back, what's called the recovery. You're a little bit more social. You're more apt, what you just said, I'll have meetings. I always joke about I'll write in my peak, but then I'll edit in my recovery. Like I can pick something up and finish it, but don't ask me to start from scratch. Right. That's a really interesting rhythm. Now, there's a lot of people, my boyfriend's one, night owls, people who really thrive differently. They go through the same cycle. They just go through it in a different order. So they can show up to an 8 a.m. meeting, call, etc. Early morning farmer's market. But yeah, I'm here, but I'm not here. Right. And so they're just going to cycle through differently. So that's your factory center, your hardware. When you have a sense of who you are and you can protect where you move faster, that's a core element of productivity. Because all the training, all the discipline, all the systems, all the Post-it notes, if you're sitting in your trough, it's just going to take you longer. So really understanding how your brain, it's if you have an electric car, when do you charge it and how fast does it charge? And that's what we're doing to our brains and our bodies all day long. So productivity really starts with the body before it gets into the habits.
Yeah, so good. I remember you sharing that at the retreat we were on recently. And well, first of all, it reminded me like I almost said it.
Oh, what are you good at? Tell me.
I would like to get out and walk more, but I have a thing of like, I got to keep going. I got to keep doing work. But after talking, I know when we were talking, I was like, all right, I just need to, even if it's a 10-minute walk, just get out, get a little fresh air, recharge.
Well, and let me give you the science of that, because when we sometimes need permission to do the things we already instinctively know we need to do. So let's just use that example. Go slow to go fast. When we think like, I don't want to slow down, I just need to finish this one thing. There's never just the one thing, because something else will come in. You'll remember you need to buy dog food on Amazon. It's just your brain's not going to stop. It is the original machine learning. It's like, so back to your walk, the fact that you even have that thought is your signal to it. And so there is this whole science behind movement of the body allows a reboot of the brain. Like when you have those software updates for your phone, you're like, I don't have time for this. It's going to take 5 minutes. That's that sort of impatience that then when we're trying to overcognitive everything, the physical boost, I mentioned water earlier. There is also any type of movement. I teach a lot at universities, and this one student said, whenever we have a 5-minute break, like off camera, he says he goes in the other room and does burpees. And he's like, I hate doing exercise at night. This way, in 5-minute segments, I'm getting those done. But there's also a huge heart rate component. When we can boost our heart rate, even if it's going out and checking the mail and walking back, that actually is resetting your brain. It's giving them those little extra bars of connectivity. So now we can also use that as a procrastination technique. So of being like, well, I'll just go do that because I'm boosting my body. And 47 minutes later, you're not actually. But those moments, there's also, when you look at the multisensory, for a lot of people, when you look at what is your auditory triggers. So some people really enjoy having music in the background. Some people need silence. For me, sometimes I will put on my big Bose headphones, even without music, because it's just signaling to my body I'm concentrating. For other people, they'll light a candle or put on essential oils because that is a mnemonic element for their body to say, we are having sensory through our body to do something with our brain. Other people will move and sit by natural light. Some people don't want to be by there. So you are already surrounded by signals and intuition of what are the things that distract me and what are the things that propel me.
Mm-hmm. So good. And it's just a self-awareness. And I think just giving people permission to say, go figure out what yours is. Like I said, I don't schedule meetings unless, there's something that just has to be done. Like it's rare when I schedule a meeting before 10, and because I know that that's really precious time, but it took a while, right? It's because I'm like, oh, I should be. And I really try not to check email. Like I'll do a quick glance, see if there's anything like really urgent, but otherwise it's like, I have my deep work tasks and I'm going to focus on that. But it took a while to give myself permission to say, this is actually the best thing. This is the best thing for my clients. This is the best thing for others, that I'm getting this work done and not immediately responding to their email.
You said the perfect word. You gave yourself permission to do that. And so when I was in corporate, I would try to front load. Oh, I'm a morning person. I'll have all my strategy meetings in the morning, and then I'll have the whole afternoon to do the work. Well, what happens in the afternoon is I'm not doing the same level of work. And then I'm so much more open to distraction.
Yeah.
Because when we are not heeding our natural chronobiology, then our brain will find other reasons to spin on it. So that's why I say going slow helps you go fast within those elements. And the distraction, especially if we talk about the digital age and the attention economy right now, we are in massive overload on it. So any element of, I'll just do a quick check of email, or and then 17 minutes later, we're still even looking at our phone. As part of the classes I'll teach, we'll do a whole thing called Tame the Tech. It's not like we're getting rid of the tech. Let's not get hysterical here. Right. But even one of the best things that I did is I changed the setting so that when I pick up my phone remains dark. It's called Rise to Wake. It's not until I touch the button that I can see all the notifications. That ridiculously small step because I know I'm easily distracted. I know I'm easily social. So if I'm in the middle, and if we really want to get nerdy in the brain, when you are in your zone and you're working, you are using your cerebral cortex. That's the executive functioning center of the brain. That's when you're like, I'm really smart. I'm writing an awesome proposal, whatever it is. You're like, I'm getting so much done. And if you allow a distraction happens, it's not even if you allow it. So let's just say it's a ding or Amazon coming to your door, a distraction happens. Your brain will switch to your amygdala, and that's your emotional center of the brain. So if I'm in the middle of doing a financial proposal, so cerebral, and then I get a text from Sari saying, do you want to have tacos tonight? My amygdala is like, yes, yes, yes. So your brain starts battling itself. So I've known, even on just moving my device, not having those notifications until I touch it and give permission, back to your word, it's been really helpful because I'm working within my hardware, but my software, which is my skills and my habits, is helping balance that out.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. I'm totally going to do that because I have I don't have notifications on my computer. I don't get, all the dings. I don't have any sounds. Because I know, so I've done a lot of the software hacks, but I didn't know about that one. So I will do that.
Well, the visuals are super. The marketing teams in big business has put so much into trying to capture your attention. And so when we take it I'm so undisciplined and I'm not being productive. Listen, they paid a lot of money to distract you. There's a reason that notification on your phone is red. Mm-hmm. That is a universal color of alarm. And the businesses, app developers, technologists went out there to say, what will stop a brain immediately and make them pay attention? A red circle. What's a stop sign?
Yeah.
Or stop light. So there's a lot that we take as mental failings that are really, truly wiring.
Right. All those little badges on your phone. And
that's exactly it. They're red for a reason. It gets your attention.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we know our hardware, we've taken into account, we've learned more about ourselves, given ourselves permission to operate within our ideal structure. Because Yeah. I mean, if you're a night owl, like just shift a little. It's okay. Especially as an entrepreneur. Like that is the beauty of that system. But you're going to have some boundaries there, right? You're going to have to do some uncomfortable things where like, I'm not available till 10 or, whatever it is. So,
so back to words. Yes. And I am available after 10. It seems so subtle, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not available almost feels like we kind of have to defend it but saying, hey, I'm available for you between 10 to 12 p.m. It's a subtle framing, but it takes it away from you mentally saying a negative, I'm not, into I am. And for the other person, they're just looking for pockets of time. But that's another great example of, and you said boundaries earlier, and I love that word, of being able to say, I'm available for this activity at this time. It's subtle, but significant.
Yeah. I feel like this whole podcast could just be me rambling on and then you catching me, which is great. I'll be the example. I don't mind.
You're allowing this to be so conversational because it's very much how we all operate.
Yeah, it's instructional. I'd love to. I'll go first and be the example for sure.
I've been going for years.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also to your point, right? Like that's why I'm a coach. I teach what I most need to learn, and I teach people how to be entrepreneurs and coach them through that because I was not a natural born entrepreneur, and all of these tools and coaching tools and brain psychology, all of it, right, is all helping people to be more successful. So I love it.
Pause on that for a second because coaching is a tool. It is a software. It is success is a team sport. And so all of those, I have a group of friends and they call it the skip the line. How can I skip the line? Has somebody else done the research? Has somebody else? And all of the greats in their field still have coaches. Michael Jordan had a coach. And so we're never done being students, especially when we allow ourselves to embrace that word or learners. But really the art of coaching and being coached is not because it's rooted in a weakness. It is how we are sharpening our iron.
Yeah. Because I remember when, because we both have the same business coach now, Dave Moreno, and it's kind of like I'm looking at Kristen, like, you've got this all together. Why on earth do you need a coach? Why, like, you're doing awesome on your own. But I love that. I mean, you said that exact thing. Like, how do I skip the line? I want to get ahead of things and have the tools and the hacks and the connection.
Accountable. Because, and we talked about this at the beginning, we will keep promises to other people long before we keep promises to ourselves.
Yeah.
So self-consistency is an ongoing skill that we continue to learn. And having a coach, having somebody who's going to hold you accountable, because especially as an entrepreneur, we will fall all over the needs of our clients and our customers before we fall over our own needs. Going for that walk. And that's the element that really comes. Coaching really is a superpower.
I love it. So good. And I love it because you're also you're not, I mean, you are a coach in a way. You're not, we have a lot of life coaches in our group and you're not in that traditional, the life coach school coaching posses, but you're coming at it from a different place, especially coming from corporate and all of that. And it's executives have coaches, like people who want to get ahead faster have coaches. Oh,
I was just, one of my client projects I have right now is a CEO transition. And with the CEO coming into the new CEO coming in, and the conversations were exactly similar to this. What words, what actions, what accountability, what signals am I having? So all the way to the very top, coaches are part of strategic, successful people. Nobody gets there alone.
Yeah. So good. Well, I know we're kind of starting to run out of time, but I want you to talk about fewer things better as a concept and tell us about where your podcast when it launches, because I'm so excited for it. Because that's really where we can learn the software, right? That's what that's all about.
Very much. And also some of the data that just kind of helps make sense. I mean, like, that's why I do that, right? And just that camaraderie in evolution, just being like, so I just launched a brand new website called unlockthebrain.com. So it's going to be a lot of this, right? Whether it's team performance and potential or a lot of individual work, because teams are made up of individuals.
Yeah.
So that's a big place where I post daily on LinkedIn and not about anything in particular every day. I'm not entirely sure what I'm writing up, but something right around environments and what we see and how just the whole conversation, what it looks like and shows up like in real life. And then my podcast, which will be launching next week, is called Fewer Things Better. And it's all 10 minutes or less. And the whole premise is just little spot nuggets of information to help us be like, how does that look in my life? And what might I try? It's just a mental menu of ideas.
Yeah. Well, back up a little bit and explain the concept. Like why? Because I think in today's society, we're like, I got to do more and more and more, multitask and do all the things, right?
Yeah.
And like,
yeah. So, well, now you're going to launch the nerd. So I'll try to make this really quick. So multitasking is a myth. And the reason I'm going after fewer things better is we've been conditioned in our society that multitasking is a skill. Kind of like, I can do math in my head. I can run a 5-minute mile. That's adorable. Those things are actually tangible, but multitasking does not exist anywhere in science. Multitasking was actually attached to the first major supercomputer that IBM launched in 1965. It was a feature of an actual computer, people, saying it can run multiple programs at once. We have somehow taken that word and made it a skill set, truly. And when you break down the science, there's no such thing. It's called task switching. It is where, and our brain can do it in multi-seconds. But being able, if you're in the middle of writing that email and then Sari asks you about tacos, right? That's a distraction. But then I go and I respond to Sari and I go back and I'm like, oh, I'm just multitasking. Or you'll be in the middle of doing something. You're like, I'm going to quickly open a browser window so I don't forget to do that later. Has anybody done that? Or why hasn't anybody answered my email? Oh, because it's still sitting in drafts. I didn't actually send it. It's all of those things when we think I'm going to do this real quick has a cost. That doesn't mean, by the way, that you can't be really good at task switching. Anybody who's talking on the phone and folding laundry, or of course we can do multiple things at once. We're a highly evolved machine ourselves, but there is a cognitive cost to it. And there's two components. One is decision fatigue, of where it's a cognitive drain by the end of the day, especially for those of you who are on that cycle of productivity. I often joke I can handle millions of ideas during the day, but I'll pay somebody a lot of money if they decide what's for dinner. It's that sort of like, I'm just done. But back to the cognitive cost of it, when you allow yourself to be distracted or you are inserting a lot of task switching, you're actually going to finish things twice as long as you would have if you had single focused, and you are twice as likely to make errors in whatever it is that you're doing. So fewer things better. It's really because at the time it feels like, oh, I'm going so slow. But in order for the efficiency component, the geometric growth of your attention, because you are really narrowing your focus. I'll never say a single focus because that's just not the American way. We just don't believe in that. But fewer things better. It's because you will actually go faster when you do fewer things in that moment or in that time frame. And that's the premise behind it.
Oh, so good. So good. Love it. You did that fast. Good job. Well, you will uncover and help us learn more about it on your podcast. And by the time this comes out, the podcast will be out. So you guys definitely need to go check out all of Kristin's work. And yeah, you post amazing things on LinkedIn. So where can they find you on LinkedIn? Just under your Kristin Graham?
Kristin Graham. I think it's actually Kristin Graham 1. I also play around in Twitter at Kristen Graham, if anybody likes that space. But true to my principle, those are my two social channels, because social alone.
I love it. Constraining, doing fewer things better.
Yeah. Yes. And we'll admire each other in all of our distractedness. That's a promise of a safe place to learn about all the things that distract us.
Well, I really wish we could go get tacos tonight, Kristen.
I know.
You got me thinking about tacos.
Words have power. And that's another, remember I said inform, inspire, and influence? I think there's a lot of tacos.
I know. I'm like, I need to have tacos.
That's happening. And go drink your water. Thank you, friend. This has been such a blast, such an honor, truly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your time today, Kristen. I cannot wait to share this with everyone. So it's awesome.
I'm so excited. Thank you, friends.
Okay. Talk soon.
Bye.
I got so much out of that. I hope you guys did too. And I really do. I just find Kristen to be one of the most amazing humans. I have learned so much from her and so grateful for her. That whole raise to wake thing on your phone, really so good. I highly encourage you to do that right now. If you have an iPhone, go into your settings. And then I can't remember exactly where it was at, but it basically you have to turn off the raise to wake, and it is brilliant. It has really reduced the distractions for me. So I highly recommend you do that. I love that I get to bring on the most amazing guests and coaches that help you learn and grow and change your mindset and just step into being a better entrepreneur and getting more done. So until next time, have an amazing week. Are you ready to start that delicious idea that you make in your home kitchen or grow your existing packaged food business and take it to the next level? The most successful food business entrepreneurs have support, guidance, focus, and accountability to help them make it happen quickly without wasting time or money. Plus, I think starting your packaged food business should actually be fun. Food business success is your secret ingredient to creating your food business dream. Please don't go this alone. Check out the private free Food Business Success Facebook group to connect with other foodpreneurs, get your questions answered quickly, share your wins, and receive special training and tools I only share inside the private community. Just search for Food Business Success on Facebook or get the link in the show notes. Curious about how food business success can help you? Head over to foodbizsuccess.com and fill out the application to see if you're a great fit for the program. Together, let's make your food business dream a reality.